Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
You got to figure out what you're going to do with D'Angelo Russell. On an expiring contract, extension eligible, benched in game 6 in the fourth quarter for Jordan McLaughlin. That's going to be an interesting call because if you don't extend him, he is going to probably be a trade candidate for you here. You look at you've got 11 players under contract. Naz Reid and Jalen Noel have team options here, but your free agents are Taurean Prince, Josh Okogie, and Jake Layman. So your core group is going to be back. Now it's a matter of how do you take that next step?
What a great segue and tee up there by a friend of the show, Bobby Marks. What was that from? Like his ESPN podcast or something?
Yeah, I think what he's doing on ESPN's YouTube channel is he's breaking down each team that's entered the offseason after the playoffs now. Because I think the Wolves picked 22 in the draft, so he's done all the teams that have been eliminated, and now he's gotten to the Timberwolves on his list. So full breakdown from Bobby, friend of the show.
So all right, well let's dive into it here. This is a Write That Down Wednesday too, and I gotta break some news to you guys. The accountability session on both shows is plentiful. It was fruitful in some areas. It was a bloodbath in other areas. So stay tuned for that throughout the day here. But this is Mackie and Judd, daily Minnesota sports entertainment therapy, and today, speculation.
Reckless speculation.
Because we have 3 Timberwolves offseason questions. Let's start with the first one. Should the Timberwolves trade D'Angelo Russell? Let's just get right into it. He's got 1 year left. It's like $33 million, somewhere in there.
Yep.
Should the Timberwolves trade D'Angelo Russell? Or maybe another question is, what would you do with D'Angelo Russell?
This isn't even a thought for me now. I would trade him. He is a regular season performer who's up and down at times. And you know what, though? He played really well at times. He was impressive. But when you pull the Houdini act that he did in the playoffs and completely make yourself disappear, I can't tolerate that. This team is going to have higher expectations than first-round exits, than being ahead by double digits in the fourth quarter 3 times and blowing them all. D'Angelo Russell, when you have to be benched at the end of game 6 there, because you're so much of a non-factor, and Jordan McLaughlin, who, God bless him. I mean, I think he is a role player. I love what he brings, but, it's nonsense of, just make him the starter. That's not how this really works. D'Angelo Russell is, I would say this, and we'll talk about Cat, and there's words to describe Cat, but at the end of the day, he's a star. D'Angelo Russell is aloof. He's too aloof for me. He is, he does things that he's not good enough to pull off unless he backs them up with great play, which he did not. It's a perfect time contractually to trade him. It's perfect. It's absolutely, the timing, if you're in the predicament the Wolves are, couldn't be better. The chance to explore basically sending an expiring contract to a different team is great. And I just don't believe that that at the end of the day, if you're going to achieve what you want, that he is a winning player to get there. I would 1,000% trade him, no questions asked.
Yeah, I would. Let's unpack this a little bit more, because you're saying he's not a winning player. I think it's a little more complicated than that. I think there are players who help you get to 40 wins and the playoffs for the first time in a long time. I mean, Stephon Marbury was kind of that for the Timberwolves. I actually think it was a blessing in disguise that the Wolves didn't lock into a decade of Stephon Marbury, watching his career play out. D'Lo reminds me a lot of Stephon Marbury 25 years later. Wildly talented. He can do so many things on a court. He's got the ball on a string as a ball handler. He's got a mid-range game. He can shoot from deep. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, he's more of a selfish, me-first, volume-shooting point guard that's not invested enough into making the entire team better. And he's sort of, you clearly have a better player or two on the roster, like Steph did back in the late 90s, and you still think that you're the guy that should be taking the last shot or driving things. So, I think D'Lo was a much-needed piece to get the Wolves from a lottery team and a team that was winning 25 games and stumbling around after the Tom Thibodeau, Jimmy Butler debacle. And I think he should be applauded for his services that helped lead the Wolves to 46 games. But the conversation, and it's happened pretty quickly here, right? Because they just went 6 games and toe-to-toe with a team that's now going toe-to-toe with the Warriors. So you're going pretty quickly from, oh, this is very feel-good, and the Wolves have gone from being irrelevant for almost 2 decades to being relevant. And most people's instincts is, just keep doing it. But as a front office, with the way that contracts are set up and the way that players tend to age out and stuff, you have to make really hard decisions right now. Who are the players that are going to get you to 60 wins at some point and actual contention in the Western Conference? And I just don't think, like, you can't unsee how bad he was in 5 of those 6 games against Memphis. He shot, actually, you know what? Let's take the 11 career playoff games. Let's take the Memphis games, and let's take the year that he helped bring Brooklyn to like 42 wins and a first round playoff series. He shoots 33% in the playoffs. He's a max money player whose production plummets in the playoffs and who had to be benched for a backup undrafted point guard. And that's no slight to Jordan McLaughlin, because I think he's a good backup point guard for this team going forward. But I don't think you can unsee it. I don't think he's young and he's only 21. He's 26. It's year 7 or whatever it is in the league for him.
Right.
And I think he's the guy that helps you get to 40 to 45 wins. But then if you want to go beyond that, it's a really tough sell at the money that he makes, especially.
And that's what I mean by winning player. Like, he can win you games in December for sure. But like when you get to the playoffs, and I don't think the Wolves aren't just a feel good, or shouldn't be a feel good story of, well, I mean, they're going somewhere, and eventually, to your point, Phil, there are players now actively aging on this team who you want to win now. Like we are past the point of the Rockets series. Well, that was fun, and Cat's going to learn a lot. Well, now we're past that. Going back to my time way back when interning with the North Stars, I'm going to give you a story about a player much like D'Lo that I thought was incredibly telling, and it was told to me by an executive at that time with the team. At the trade deadline in '88, I believe, they traded Cicerelli to the Capitals. And the main return was a guy by the name of Mike Gartner, who had been with the Capitals forever. Really good player, really fast, great shot. And he had been with the Capitals for a long, long time. The North Stars had him for like a year and a half or so and traded him. And supposedly the Capitals GM called the North Stars GM after that trade and said, it took you a year and a half what it took me 10 to figure out. Which is, this isn't a winning player. It's a good player, but it's not a winning player. And those are like the intangibles. Like, that's where pro sports is. And so, yes, D'Lo can help you in the season, and I think you're exactly right. He can help you get to an X amount of wins. But when you get to the playoffs, can he help you win games there? Because that's crunch time. And I think the answer is no.
Yeah, and one more thing to add here, too, is, and we can talk about the contract, but you've got Anthony Edwards blossoming and rising up in these big games, and there's going to be some discussion about Karl Anthony Towns because you're going to wind up having to pay him like $40+ million a year on a max contract here, and you have to make that decision this summer. But if they decide to keep Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, clearly they're keeping Anthony Edwards going forward. The third guy can't have a lack of self-awareness. The third guy can't think that he's James Harden and just go rogue with 15 seconds left in a playoff game in which he's shooting 30%. Mm-hmm. You know, it needs to be, not that you can't take big shots and get your own, but the mindset needs to be, these are the 2 best players on the team. How can I facilitate their success all the time first? And then if the ball comes back around to me, or it makes sense, or they're covered or whatever, then but he's trying to shoehorn his offense in these big games, and it's not working. It'd be one thing if, oh my God, he's shoehorning it in and it's working. Anthony Edwards will try and shoehorn his offense in, and it works because he's really good. Right. So I don't know. I don't know that there's, for the people that are like, well, they're just like, they're going through growing pains. Yes, you have to separate the things that are growing pains from the things that are just the way that they are. And I feel like D'Lo deserves credit for helping the Wolves get to where they are now, but he just kind of is who he is as a player, and he's not worth $30+ million.
And it feels like, too, that, look, the Wolves had a great season, and they were the 7th seed, and obviously it was a phenomenal year to watch. But remember that Denver's going to get Jamal Murray back and healthy next year. I don't look at the Clippers as a play-in team again. They're probably going to be a lot better than they were.
Kawhi's coming back.
I think there's assumption among Wolves fans like, oh, well, we're only going to go up. We're only going to vault from 7 to up. Well, start doing the math on like who's going to be backup. And also New Orleans had a great year, like had a surprise year, I know, this season, getting into the playoffs. Like it's not a lock that the Wolves are just now the floor of a 6 or 7 seed. Like they're still have to fight to be a top 6 seed.
Dude, also, Damian Lillard's coming back in Portland, and they're going to try and add something. They're going to try and make his last couple of years worth something. People laugh at the Lakers, but they still have LeBron James playing at a really high level, and they're going to try and do something. So you're right. The Western Conference is likely to get better going forward.
Yep.
So how are you evolving and getting better and adding winning pieces to this thing, right?
And I think the thing, too, is ascending teams always have certain guys that probably don't fit the next step. Like, just forget the conference. Your team, if you look at your team and say, well, I mean, it's pretty good, right? Yeah, it's pretty good. That's missing the big picture of look at teams that have ascended. They often make some very important tweaks.
You know what? This is kind of an apples to oranges, but as you said that, the first team that popped into my head was the late 90s Sacramento Kings. Remember when they had white chocolate Jason Williams as their flashy point guard, and they emerged as this relevant team for the first time in the decade? And I think they might have gotten to the playoffs with Jason Williams, and then they decided, and again, I'm not comparing, I think D'Lo's a better player than that version of Jason. They're different players.
Sure.
But the Kings said, okay, that was fun, awesome. So we're kind of here now, but now there's another step if we want to compete with the Lakers and the Spurs and the Jazz at the time and those teams that were really making noise. I mean, hell, even the Timberwolves, right? And they said, we're going to swap out flashy Jason Williams, sort of lack of self-awareness Jason Williams for rock solid but pretty boring Mike Bibby. And Mike Bibby is going to be the point guard who just shoots 19-foot jumpers and gets the ball to Chris Webber and moves the ball around. And then the Kings, I know they never won a championship, but the Kings wound up on the doorstep of a championship a couple years in a row by making that tough decision. Mm-hmm. So on the contract thing, I've seen a lot of people say, well, I mean, you can't just, his value is at an all-time low, and who's going to want that contract? Well, that's the thing about the NBA is that expiring contracts are actually really valuable. If there's 1 year left on a guy's bloated contract, it's a great piece. Not that you wouldn't just be able to trade that. You'd have to probably attach something to it, maybe like a future first-round pick, which we'll see. But if there's a rebuilding team that wants to clear cap space for next summer, you can do a lot worse than 1 year of D'Angelo Russell, who's a good player. Mm-hmm. He's a good player. So could you move D'Angelo Russell and like a future first or another asset of some kind without ruining your nucleus, and then bring someone in either through a sign-in trade? Because you don't have, the other problem is you don't really have cap space. So any move you make would have to be a trade or a sign-in trade. And I think you can't start Jordan McLaughlin. We got to be careful of saying Jordan McLaughlin was better in the last 5 minutes. He's a backup point guard. So you need a starting point guard. And there's guys out there. Jalen Brunson from the Mavericks has exploded the last 2 years. He would be amazing. Tyus Jones has gotten better. So, but those would have to be sign-in trades almost certainly, and you'd have to figure out like a 2 or 3 team trade. So I don't have all those ideas for this episode, but you got to figure something out, I think.
So we're all done though here. Like we're all going to trade them.
It doesn't have to be contentious. Thank you, man. You helped us so much, but now what if he says, and I know you guys talked about this with Doogie, if he says, listen, I totally get, I don't think he's going to do this, but
right.
I totally get it. I just totally fumbled the ball in that Memphis series. I don't need to be paid $30 million. I just want to be part of this thing, and I will continue to get better, and I will take a huge haircut. But I don't think that's what's going to happen.
And I'm still out. Because you can say that. Like, I mean, we've seen how many athletes, especially good ones, say that, right? Like, I'll change, and then they don't change. No, I think you're right, Phil. Thank you very much. It's been great. We took a very important step, too. Like, you helped us. But as far as the vision goes, and roster construction-wise, and probably just as importantly, personality roster construction-wise, I'm good. See you later.
By the way, real quick here, we got a new partner on Mackie and Judd and Purple Daily, and it fits right into this discussion here. Underdog Fantasy and UnderdogFantasy.com. So the app is just amazing. We've got Judd hooked on this thing, and Judd's not exactly like Mr. Technology, but even Judd is just having a blast on this thing.
I played two hockey drafts last night. Not one, but two.
Nice. Who did you draft?
Well, here's the problem: is I actually had good drafts, but the points went so high that let's just say that Sports Dad didn't fare too well. But it gave me a sweat, and a sweat keeps you watching.
It's the best and easiest way to get a sweat on games, either tonight or long term. If you sign up now with the promo code SCORE, SKOR, Underdog Fantasy will double your first deposit up to $100. So the website and app are incredibly user-friendly. Like right now, I'm looking for, because I'm a big NBA junkie, so I'm looking tonight. There's a Wednesday basic battle royal with $25,000 in guaranteed prizes. So there's going to be like 5,000 entrants. What you do is you get in these little pods of 4. So let's say it's the 3 of us and somebody else, and you draft a roster of 6 in that pod of 4. And then you compete against everybody else in the thing, and you have a chance. The top prize is $5,000. So, listen, promo code SCORE. You can help us, and they can help you. Up to $100 on your first deposit. Underdog Fantasy and the Underdog Fantasy app.
Old Dex Tweets finished second place in a top shelf league on hockey when on his first draft. It can happen to you too. If I can win, for God's sakes, you can win.
To anyone.
It can happen.
All right, question number 2 here. Key Timberwolves offseason questions. Number 2. Should the Wolves give Karl Anthony Towns a max extension this summer? And here's the setup. So, Kat, if he makes an all-NBA team, if he makes first, second, or third team all-NBA, which there's a pretty good chance of that happening, he'll be eligible for a 4-year, $211 million Supermax extension that kicks in 2 years from now. If he doesn't make an All-NBA team, he's still eligible for a lot of money, 3 years and $131 million. So he currently has 2 years left and around $70 million total on his current contract. These new contracts, either one of them would kick in after that and basically take him into his early 30s as one of the highest paid players in the NBA. That's the decision you have to make this summer. What do you do?
I absolutely do it. Here's why. Credit to Doogie. And he's exactly right. You do it because, worst case, you can always trade it. Like somebody will take that contract. Doogie's exactly right. So, and look, Karl drives me crazy at times. And do I think he's wired exactly right? No. Do I think he's going to be at some point? No. He's old enough now where I think he's a great player, but I think he is personality-wise who he's going to be. But all of that being said, Darren hit the nail on the head, which is, as long as I do it and I can trade the contract, worst case, I'm fine with it. So, and I also think that no matter what the stunts he might pull at times and the whining that he might do at times, he is a fundamental, very important piece to what I'm doing. And I don't think that you can, unlike D'Lo, just go out and find a guy like Cat. Like, I can get a better Cat. You really can't. As bad as the playoffs were at times, because they were good at times, now that I'm calm, cool, and collected, and I've decided that I definitely am going to move on from D'Angelo Russell, I am going to sign Cat to this contract, almost certainly once he's probably named second or third team All-NBA.
Yeah, so I will echo what you and Doogie said, which is signing him to a max is a no-brainer. Thinking on this for a couple weeks, you can always trade him if you need to. Yeah. So just now, if somebody else offers something that you can't refuse, I don't know what that would be, then listen, I'm listening on Karl Anthony Towns because I also saw some things I can't unsee throughout the season and during the playoff series against Memphis, the game against the Clippers. And I think similar to D'Angelo Russell, you have to do an evaluation here of who are the players. I think Anthony Edwards is a championship piece long term. I know that's crazy to say maybe after 2 years, but look at how this dude's 20 years old and look what he's doing. He thinks he's the best player on the court, and sometimes he is. And I think he's only what is he going to be in 2 years, 5 years from now? You know, Cat is more of a finished product there's some refinements maybe, but when you get 7 years in the league and you're 26 years old, you are kind of a finished product. And I think the question is that finished product enough at the price that he's going to command to be a centerpiece or a secondary piece to a team that wants to contend for a championship? And I think where he falls short is he's not the Tim Duncan. He's not the Giannis. He's not going to be the driving force on a championship team, and yet you're going to be forced to maybe pay him like that Now the good news is Anthony Edwards he's not up for a deal. Like he's going to be on the cheap here for another couple years. But here's my question. If Cat's not that guy, and I don't think he is, he's not Duncan, he's not even really KG, he's not Giannis, can he be the Chris Bosh on Miami, right? Can he be the Kevin Love on Cleveland? Can he be, the Pau Gasol or the Lamar Odom at his peak behind Kobe on the Lakers? Can he settle into that role? And are you paying him too much money to be that guy? Those are the questions I have. I still sign with the extension. I don't like that he's unreliable. I don't like that he basically no-showed. If you count the playing game against the Clippers, he no-showed 4 of the 7 games. 4 of the 7 games. He's your best player. He's just fouling out, or he's spazzing, or he's shooting, 25, 30% from the field. Like, the other thing, too, is we have an 11-game playoff sample size with him, which isn't huge, but it's 11 playoff games. And his performance drops pretty sharply. His fouls go up. His efficiency goes down. His scoring drops off. Teams are able to fluster him. So I just need to know that there's another level to his mental game. It doesn't have to be Tim Duncan-like, but there's got to be another level, and he's got to be able to slot in sort of behind Anthony Edwards and be comfortable with that as that baton gets passed.
Can I suggest this just as a possibility? So, like, this is not a hot take, but is there a possibility, too, that as Chris Finch, who I think is very good, but as he matures as a coach, and, like, there were things in the playoffs that the Wolves did and Finch did that I didn't like, and I think he's going to learn from that. Would there be ways that you could also do a better job of coaching Cat in that pressure? Because, like, I don't want to give up on Cat. Like, I really don't want to give up on Cat. I think what he brings, while it might not be the creme de la creme of superstars in this league, it can be special. But would there be better ways to control the flow of the game, to control how the ball goes through him? I'm just spitballing here. Mm-hmm. But look, I don't think Cat's personality is going to change. I think Chris Finch is going to sit down and watch the film of the Memphis series and learn what he could have done, what Finch could have done better, which then could have a positive impact on guys like Cat. Could that be a possibility? I'm not saying it fixes everything. It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean,
but can it help?
There's definitely things that could be done, and I'm sure there's conversations that could be held. But I also think that you just kind of are who you are when you're 26, 27 years old. So can they manage around it? When he starts to get into, the foul trouble thing is kind of checkmate, because he's so talented, and then when he gets mentally flustered and then he's on the bench, it's like it drags everything else down. So what are ways that a coach can manage foul trouble? You can't. It's up to the player to not be so spastic and kick his leg out and get an offensive foul on a 3-point attempt and then blame the refs. Like, there's so many immature things about his personality that get magnified in these big games because the tension goes up and the pressure goes up and the lights get brighter. So those are my biggest concerns, and I'll use the word unreliable again. I want to know what I'm getting. It's like I don't. The 7 games they played, 6 against Memphis, 1 against the Clippers, you literally have no idea what you're getting from night to night from Cat. He could go into cyborg mode and be locked in and channel his energy well for 2 or 3 games, or he could just get out there and flail and get flustered by a double team. I just need a more narrow range of what I can expect from the highest paid player and potentially best player on the team.
And I think what you're hoping for, probably best case, because I don't think Cat's going to change now. I think it's that Finch grows as a coach, and Ant, as he matures as a player, can take more control. Because I think if you can milk the best from Cat, that's pretty damn good.
Agreed.
But the problem is, I don't know that person exists right now. But I have confidence that as Ant grows, that he's going to basically be able to take control of things.
Yep, yes, and then he can be kind of more of a general even on the court, and he's kind of shown some of those leadership qualities, the way that he puts his arm around Jaden McDaniels, and the way that he, the fact that he's sitting there in his postseason press conference recapping and talking about Jaden McDaniels and how, once this guy develops confidence like I have, watch out for him as a player. I mean, he's talking about McDaniels as if there's a 10-year age gap between them, and I think McDaniels is older.
Yeah, so. and I'll give you a small thing that I absolutely thought was fantastic. When the series was wrapping up, Ja went over to Ant to, like, I don't know, say great series or console him a little bit. And Ant didn't change. Like, he was pissed. Like, he didn't look like, oh man, that was so tough. And like when guys console Cat, he like takes the consoling. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And look, I mean, that's just Cat. I'm not trying to rip him. But my point is, Ant maintained that fire like this is BS. Yeah, I love that.
And that is, you knew that they were going to lose at some point in the playoffs, right? Like, no one thought they were going to win a championship this season. And so what you really wanted was for especially Anthony Edwards to get some great experience. Don't just get swept and beat by 20 points every night by the Suns or something. Get into these games, get some great experience. Now, I really didn't want the experience to be blowing 3 double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. Like, that's a little too much experience for my liking. But you kind of want Anthony Edwards to sit with that feeling until October, until training camp starts. Just be waking up every morning thinking, man, what are the 3 things I can add to my game, and what am I going to do the next time I'm in that situation? And Cat the same way, but I think Ant really took it personally, almost that, man, I have another level that I can unlock as a 20-year-old, and I'm better than Ja. I've got a bigger body, I've got more explosiveness, even potentially. So I love that he's kind of sitting with that all throughout the summer.
He legit shrugged that, like when Ja put his arm around him, and like if you see the replay, he literally actually shrugs him off. Like, it's like, dude, get off me. I'm not about this right now. I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm. So question number 3 here, 3 key Wolves offseason questions, kind of a carryover of this Ant conversation. What do you think Anthony Edwards' ceiling is? What can the Timberwolves bank on 3 years from now as he progresses? What is his ceiling?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to put one on him because I don't know that we know. I think he is incredible. I think his ceiling is, dare I say, superstar. Like, he's young, learning, wired absolutely correct. Like, if you could go back and rewire Cat as a player, you definitely would. With Ant, you wouldn't touch a damn thing. The engine is like, that's what you want. He's wired exactly correct. And are there games where he's not good? Yes, but guess what? It's not because he's not trying. It's usually not because he's pouting. I actually, to go back to Ja, I think competing against Ja for 6 games was great because, Phil, your statement's probably right. Ja Morant does probably not have as much God-given talent to be as good a player as Ant.
Can't shoot. Yeah, well, he made a big shot last night, I guess.
Right, but I mean, he is wired 1,000% correct. Yeah. And I think for Ant to see that, that's only going to solidify. Like, Ant's not going to look at Cat and thinks, well, I should complain more. Mm-hmm. Ant's going to look and be like, how do we win more games? So this might sound pie in the sky and silly, but I'm not going to put a ceiling on Ant because I don't know exactly where that exists. I just know this: the Wolves have their guy who can be their alpha now, which I have not felt, because Butler was an alpha unto himself, but it didn't have to do with the rest of his teammates. Ant is all about his teammates. So I am sky high on Ant Edwards.
I'm going to try and quantify his ceiling here using the current landscape of players in the NBA, because I think scorer is the thing, right? He's a scorer. He can get to the rim at will. He can shoot. You know, I think there's another level to his 3-point game. He gets a little inconsistent sometimes, but in the playoffs, it was dialed. He's just knocking down big threes. He's got a mid-range game. He's got a Euro step in the paint, and this is as a 20-year-old kid, right? So he's going to add things to his game too. So I look at, who are the top 5 to 10 scorers in the NBA, and there's a couple big guys at the top that are hard. You can't really compare them to Embiid or Giannis. Even those guys are just like 7-foot freaks,
right?
But then you start to get into like, okay, Luka is kind of this unicorn. He looks like a beer league player that just averages 38 and 9 every single night. I don't know how he does it. He's somehow he gets by defenders. He's not in the greatest shape all the time. So I think Luka is almost in this different category. Mm-hmm. Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell were 8th and 9th. And Jason Tatum's a little bit bigger. Jason Tatum, what is he, like 6'9", 6'8"? He's listed at 6'8". But I look at that trio of like Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, and they're all kind of in that 20 26 to 27 points per game range once you get past the big guys like Jokic and Embiid and Antetokounmpo. He's bigger than Booker and Mitchell. He's not quite as big as Tatum. It's a little bit of a different comparison there, but I think he slots in sort of above Donovan Mitchell and Booker in terms of his upside. And then anything beyond that is sort of what else can he tap into as a playmaker? I think he can score with the best players in the NBA in 2 or 3 years from now. But then when you look at Luka and you look at Tatum, these guys are also grabbing a ton of rebounds and they're opening up passing lanes for their teammates. So the playmaker phase is the next phase for him as his career progresses.
And the dynamic part, personality-wise, to me is so key because I would say right now at 20, he is the second most dynamic personality that this team has ever had next to KG. Like, he is a guy who people will follow, which it might sound cliche, but it's incredibly important. And he wants you to follow. Butler didn't give a damn. Mm-hmm. So I think just as far as a positive personality of who can be the lead car here, like who can you attach the rest of the cars to? Because that's my point about Cat. The saving grace here is Ant will allow, if Cat will do it, Cat to be himself, and it's not going to be a disaster. Because look, guys, if this discussion were the Wolves are getting good and Cat is the guy, and they have to follow Cat, I got no confidence in that. Zero faith. Yeah. So I really think it's the combination of talent, scoring ability, and also the fact that this guy is a clear-cut captain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there it is. Let us know what you guys think, too, in the Score North YouTube channel comment section. We will be sprinkling in a lot of these speculative offseason Wolves discussions as we go forward, too. We're also kicking around a lot of people have been asking, you got Judd's hockey show. Why don't you guys have a dedicated Wolves show? And trust us, we've been thinking about it, and we're trying to work through schedules and stuff, but maybe this summer is the time to launch one. We'll see.
I wonder who could host it. Maybe
who gets over emotional after blown 26-point leads and calls Timberwolves players clowns? Well, we can find somebody.
I don't know who we're gonna get.
We'll see. All right, let's take a breath here and prepare ourselves for a vibrant Write That Down session and accountability session. Mackie and Judd.